Good morning. We are live here with Sam Chapman and Coffee with Humans. Sam and I met about 8 minutes ago. Welcome to Coffee with Humans, Sam.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Good to have you. Some Facebook user is saying, "Love Coffee Talk." When is this, Todd? I don't know who you are, unfortunately.
It's right now.
But let me find out. Let me find out who that is. While I'm doing that, Sam, where are you located? I'm bad with accents.
The UK, in England, yeah. In Bristol specifically, but everyone sounds the same in this half of the country, so you wouldn't be able to tell anyway.
Yeah, because I was on the phone or coffee, I think, the other day with somebody from Australia, and I couldn't place that either.
Yeah, a lot of people think that English people sound Australian in other parts of the world, but Australians and English people would obviously argue that we don't sound the same at all. So
yeah, no, I totally get it. Do I have an accent to you?
Yeah, you have an American accent, although I couldn't place where in America you're from.
Okay.
I have no idea. I know there is quite a big difference, but
yeah, because if I was, that's my friend Shayna actually saying, and she's saying, "Welcome, Sam." Yeah, if you were in the States, you'd say I had a Chicago accent.
Okay.
I go accent. It's like so instead of like the southern states or something like that.
Yeah.
The Boston. I don't know. I can't do accents. We're not doing accents.
I can't do accents at all either. So
we're also not doing. We could do mime.
Yeah, I mean that's much easier than accents, isn't it? Clearly.
So what inspired? Go ahead.
Sorry, go on.
What inspired you to have coffee?
I was on Matchmaker FM. My friend suggested going on it, and there's lots of cool shows on there, but this was particularly cool looking. I just like the idea that there's no like talking beforehand, really. Even when we were doing the technical stuff, you were pretty cold wall because now we can sort of learn about each other naturally, which is really interesting. And it's just a good space to talk about anything at all. So I suppose we'll see where the conversation leads us, but it's quite exciting. That's
awesome. So we were on Matchmaker FM, which, to be clear, is not a dating site.
Sounds like it, doesn't it?
It sounds, yeah, exactly. It's a site for podcasters to see other podcasters around the world, I guess. And they have something like 15,000 podcasters or videocasters on there or something.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, you're the first show that I've been on from it, so but it seems quite good.
Yeah,
and meet random people, which is great.
Right, totally. I love it. The premise of the show is that it's just any old random person can come on and have coffee. We talk about anything. The only rule is no sales calls. So we've talked about, what have we talked about? Shoot, we talked about making crumpets once. One of my first guests, we were talking about making crumpets, and then I started choking on a piece of something, and I was like, so it's fun.
Have you ever had any attempted sales calls? How did you deal with that?
I've not had an attempted sales calls. I don't know how I would deal with it.
It's because there's no real guarantee that someone isn't going to go into a sales pitch, is there?
So I was talking to a guy yesterday who's a YouTube consultant, because I was asking about, hey, let's make this YouTube channel something better. And he said, do you think it's a flawed premise to have a coffee with some random person because you don't know anything about that person, what you're going to get, the quality of the content, technical issues? Like yesterday I had this weird mic feedback issue.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I don't know. Do you think it's a flawed premise? And I think he thought it was a flawed premise, which is, I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion. But what do you think? Why? It's intriguing to people like you and other people. They're like, I love the fact that you don't know me and we're going to get on and talk about anything.
I think that people maybe think that there's going to be something that goes wrong automatically. I don't know why. Maybe there will be. Maybe in like 50 or so episodes, you'll have one person who comes on as selling or is really boring or whatever else. But surely that's good content within itself. There's plenty of things on YouTube that are just videos of people failing, so I don't really see why that wouldn't be good content within itself anyway. But that might be what goes viral. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, out of the 50, the rest of them are going to be really interesting conversations. So why not try it out?
Yeah, I think so too. So so the fact that you said I might get a boring one, I'm guessing that's you're not the boring one.
I mean, I hope so. We'll see, I suppose.
Well, you're here.
Not boring enough, not so boring that I wouldn't come on and try this out, I guess.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what's up with your podcast? What do you do? What do you talk about?
I don't do a podcast. I was just on there as a guest.
You were just on there as a guest?
Yeah, but I run I've been trying to do some video, I guess you call it like vodcasting, or a bit like this, I guess. It's kind of a podcast with video.
Yeah.
For my company. But I'm not very good at, I'm not a professional TV presenter or like radio host. So it's been interesting. When you're doing it for a company, you have to try and make sure you're talking about your company and, almost be advertising. But then you can end up on really long tangents and talking about everything else, like philosophy or, whatever else you're talking about. So I think we put that one on the back burner for now. Because, it's actually doing a podcast should be a full-time thing if you're going to make quality content. It shouldn't just be something you do on the side necessarily, because you have to put energy into it, I guess. Okay,
I agree with that.
Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah, I don't put a lot of energy into this. I
suppose you don't have to put huge amounts of research in or anything, do you?
I put no it's like structured perfectly for me. Because I do no research on people by design, or at least very little research. So I go into it pretty cold, and then it's live, and then we just live stream it to, at this point, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's probably completely counter to what I said, and fair enough as well. So, I think that you've got a particular format, which means that you can kind of take pleasure and get a benefit from not actually having to work on it full time. But a lot of people, I mean, you see now most YouTube channels that want to be successful have a really strict formula for how they grow their users, how they make content. And, like thumbnail design is something that's really important nowadays, something really what seems trivial, and yet it's the difference between someone clicking and someone not. So, obviously you haven't put that much thought into things like that, and that's good. That's probably healthy because it means your content's going to be more genuine. But yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into the most simple YouTube channel now, which I don't really think was necessarily the founding principle of a video sharing platform in the first place.
Well, it's interesting. During the chat yesterday, one of the things is what keyword do you want to target to get more viewers, more listeners on YouTube? What keywords? You can dominate keywords. So, for instance, maybe if I say live talk show, we could dominate the word live talk show, which there are 10,000 searches a month or something like that.
Yeah.
Do you think that targeting content, instead of keeping it open and genuine, do you think there's pros and cons to that in terms of your genuine or what? I don't know. What do you think?
I think obviously, you said you're talking to a YouTube consultant. That's you taking the genuine project you're doing and then finding out a way to improve on it and maybe get extra following or whatever else, right? That's the ultimate goal. But what you're not necessarily doing is changing your format or creating content for the sake of getting viewers. Your content remains, I hope, relatively consistent. It's what you set it up to be. Whereas there is a thing in marketing now, especially companies, where you're encouraged to create content just for the engagement. Of course you are, because that's how you end up selling. And, there's value in that for a business and there's value in that for money making. But whether or not, writing, 1,000 blog posts so you get extra, visitors on your website actually has value within itself, the content has value, that's quite a hard balance to strike. Because obviously all you're thinking about is how many keywords can I get in here? How many different ways can I mess with the algorithm? How many users can I get? And that's what the focus is, not actually what the content itself is. I think there's kind of probably two sides to it.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think that it's a yin and yang. I don't know if it's a yin and yang, but it's a kind of a push and pull on create quality content that engages users, because there's some metrics that would push or promote content based on its engagement rates, which is like watch time and things like that. And then on the other side, it's is it findable in search?
Yeah.
When people type in the word something like live talk show, will it come up in the search? Well, then you got to say live talk show.
Yeah. You have to say the weirdest thing in the YouTube algorithm now. I don't know if this is how true this is, but I've been told that you can say certain words within the actual audio of the video, and then it will put you in a certain place. Like you just said, live talk show, right? And that seems bizarre. I mean, obviously the algorithm has to work somehow, but it is weird to think that there's a whole host of people out there who have made careers now out of just figuring out how to manipulate those algorithms the best way they can, and then producing content that people watch. I don't know. I mean, I don't think it detracts necessarily from the platform or from anything that's created. I just think it's just a weird phenomena that exists. It used to be that any content, newspapers, whatever, would have been created to inform, to entertain, whatever else, not necessarily to get readership, although it would happen to, because it was good content, and that's why you make it. But then you've got this thing now where basically everything that gets successful on the internet is almost like tabloid in the way it's designed. I mean, a thumbnail is similar to tabloid headlines. It's just like really exciting, really extreme words and images. So you click on that link, and then you can click through to it, and it's completely irrelevant to what the actual thumbnail is. But suddenly, here you are watching the video, and that person's got engagement, right?
You're right. It is like there are like tabloid thumbnails now. Yeah, because like it would be like the person like,
yeah,
and then there's words spread across the top.
I guess I would ask you, you're obviously getting a YouTube consultant helping you a bit.
Yeah.
Do you think that, he's asking you if your concept works? Do you think that if he said to you, I'm not saying he's going to say this, but say he did, say, okay, if you do X, Y, and Z, you will get more viewers. But the X, Y, and Z you have to do is, I don't know, change your content in this way, stop this part of the thing you really believe in, and make ridiculous thumbnails, right? If there were things that you would have to change that you didn't necessarily want to change, but you knew they'd get you viewers, would you do that? Or do you think that you would be more true to the format as it is now?
Yes, and so I think so. Here's what I've done so far. I just did this the other day, or last night. I changed the title to Coffee with Humans Live Talk Show.
Okay.
That's the title of the channel now, which makes more sense. If you go to YouTube, Coffee with Humans Live Talk Show, so that if a person were number one to stumble across it, they go, "I'm in the right place." I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. I changed the title banner so it says Coffee with Humans live streamed talk show, new episodes weekly, so that if you saw that, you're like, "Oh, I get it. It's coming out frequently. It's a live talk show. It's Coffee with Humans. Again, I'm in the right place."
Yeah.
And then I wrote a little bit of about information, which talks about, it unpacks a little bit more about how I meet my guests about 8 minutes before we go live, and then we talk about anything. There are only rules, no sales calls. And I think by doing that, I've not fundamentally changed the content. I've made it more accessible to people, so that they feel like they're in the right place, which I think is important. That was number one. In terms of, is it live or is it not? I think he had a point that some things don't have to be live. It could be edited down and viewable later. So an hour long show becomes 45 minutes, or 45 minutes becomes a half hour because things are clipped out, and mistakes are taken out, things like that. I'm not ready. I'm not going to make that step right now.
Yeah. Is that because you think that the editing would detract from the format, or just because it's massively time consuming to then go and suddenly start editing things down?
Probably both.
Fair enough. I think that it can be good to have a bit of mistakes in the show anyway, because we are actual humans, not radio presenters reading a script. So that's kind of part of the charm, right?
Well, I think so. I think the raw format, the raw unfiltered conversations. Because here's the title I was playing around. It's raw unfiltered conversations where strangers become friends.
Yeah, it's very nice. It sums it up quite nicely.
Yeah, I think so.
But also,
like, yeah,
changing a title like that can actually massively up your engagement, right? Because like we had a social media advertising campaign a while ago, and we were playing around with the like design of each post. And on one post, we just put an emoji that was slightly different from another emoji, and that was the only difference on the post. And the engagement went up massively just from that change in emoji. And I mean, changing the whole title is a bit different, but it just shows that like something that small can suddenly, skyrocket you because people are that fickle. They're like attention so short. Oh, that I don't know. I don't know if it's subconscious. They probably don't think consciously I relate to that emoji, but they obviously for some reason do. And then you've got more users and you've got more viewers or whatever else it is. Yeah.
Oh, I agree. I think engagement is an interesting. You use the word fickle, and I think it's pretty true. We have short attention spans, and we are programmed to see the things that we're looking for. So if I said so, I think the for instance is if you ever bought a car before, like you find a car that nobody else has or something like that, like a green Honda or something, I don't know. And then as soon as you buy like green Honda, you're like, damn it, everybody's got a green Honda. There's so many green Hondas out there. Like, how did all these green Hondas come from? I thought it was so different. And you find out, no, you're exactly the same. But it wasn't, you weren't looking for it. You weren't seeing it before. And so I think, that first principle of if people are looking for something, show up in a way that they want to see it, regardless of whatever it is that you're doing, because you can have, and I've used this lesson before with people. It's like with business people I've consulted with in businesses. You could have a great product or service and communicate it poorly, and no one will buy it. Likewise, you could have a terrible product or service and communicate it really, really well, and people will buy it. And that's and people are you sure? It's like, yeah, every infomercial you've ever seen, where you were just like randomly flipping through the channels, and all of a sudden it's like, you need to slap chop, slap 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 chop 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 chop. Like one thing you needed, or an expandable hose. Like I need an expandable hose. I need 5 of them for my family and friends if I buy now. It's this the communication takes something that you don't want, turns into something that you do, because they figure out the way in. Like infomercials, I think, just keep opening emotional doors on you, over time. And a half hour later, they found a couple that stick. And they're like, all right, I'll buy it. Fine.
I think that it's kind of weird in the startup community. You're encouraged to be so product focused because investors and everyone say to you, like, you should be focusing on product, make the product the best solution for the problem, and then people will just naturally buy it, and users will just come to you, by a word of mouth, and that'll be it. And that is true to a certain extent early on, but it is true. I mean, I've seen so many things on sale, even just like from drop shipping stores on Instagram, and it is effectively the same item you can buy on, say, Amazon for half the price, with some slightly different branding and better advertising, and it's double the price, and people go for that one every time because it's about the communication, about how that they viewed it. It's the same concept with brands that do drops of exclusive like shoes, or like the Supreme did a brick at one point. It's about this, like, suddenly there's exclusivity around this brick. There was like 10,000 or I don't know 10 million versions of the brick for sale, and it wasn't Supreme, it'd still just be a brick, but no one would pay for it at all. It's about that communication, right? I don't know why we like that as human beings. I'm obviously not enough of a psychologist to understand, but it's just a strange phenomenon, and it gets worse as or more extreme as the internet kind of develops.
I think this is Shana here still. People buy you, not necessarily your product. And thanks everybody for your comments and questions. If you have comments or questions, drop them into the chat. We'll certainly address them. So people buy you, not necessarily your product.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I have a lot of people who say to me, especially when it comes to investing, which is similar, they don't invest in the idea, they invest in the person. And when it comes to selling, it's probably similar. If you can build a relationship of trust with someone, then even if they're not quite sure whether that your product is the thing they need, they're probably going to be like, might as well try it anyway. I trust this person. He probably has my best interests at heart, or he or she probably has my best interests at heart. And I think that kind of matters quite a lot, which I suppose matters. It's quite important. But obviously, in reality, if you had a much better product that was going to solve your problem, you should go for that one, even if it's from a guy you don't trust at all, right? Because that is going to solve your problem.
I think the gateway between so I think the gateway between us buying something and is that person in the middle, because I think many times don't know enough about, or we don't trust ourselves enough to know enough about whatever it is we're buying. Like the television, let's say, I was talking to him, I think my brother-in-law the other day, and he's got a new house, he's got this big wants a big. We were talking to me. I don't know if he wants a big television. I just guess he wants a big television, right? Who doesn't want a big television? And I was like, well, we were talking about all the different types of televisions you could get, and I said, well, you don't overpay for this thing, because if you didn't see 5 different televisions on the wall, you probably wouldn't know the difference between each of them, because in your home, in your life, one is going to be just as good as the other one. Only you're going to save a significant amount of money by going with this other one that is, affordable. It's just not this name brand. But if you walk into a store that's got 5 different televisions along the wall, there's going to be a salesperson sitting there, and that salesperson seemingly knows more about televisions than you do. And so Gateway is that person who you go, well, I don't, he said, and now we take that responsibility and almost put it on that person. And that I think that's where the trust enters, that in a space where I don't know enough to trust myself, I have to trust you. And then it is your recommendation.
I think there's kind of this illusion around selling that you have to, as a salesman, create need or create a reason for that person to get the product. But a really good salesman is that gateway. You can't force someone in all circumstances, especially with more expensive products, maybe like televisions, probably similar in selling houses, for example. You can't force someone all the time to purchase something if they're not going to purchase it, they don't want it. But a really good salesman does listen to those needs, establishes that trust, and if they have to sell a slightly cheaper product to sell a product at all, but it actually fills the customer's needs without overcharging them, then that's a good salesman. They've built a good rapport there. And the next time that person wants television, if they got a good deal with the guy last time, they're going to go back. I think television is probably slightly different because we buy them online now generally. But, I think that's kind of the real key. But the real difference between being an okay salesman and a great salesman, it's got to be having that trust and actually honestly giving the person the best deal. Because you should want them to get that best deal, because then they're going to like you and they're going to come back to you, right? And that can only be better for the amount of money you're going to make in the future.
Yeah, no, you're right. Nowadays, a lot of times we buy these things online, and then the proxy for the salesperson is now the website that we go to. Does the website look like it is reputable? Does the website have reviews? Does the website got a lot of information on there? And am I educated enough to understand that and the things I care about? And that's true. Back to the idea of the infomercial. The infomercial just kind of attacks us in all of these emotional ways. It's like, well, here's an image of you using it with your children, and if you care about children, you're going to buy this hose. And there's an image of you using it, with your grandparents. If you love your grandparents, you're going to buy this hose, right? And eventually, it's like, oh, okay. I find the place the thing that you care about, the infomercial finds the thing that I care about. And then that starts to sway me. And then they go, well, they put other, I think, influences on us. There's a handful of ways people are influenced. The one is time. You got to buy the next 30 minutes, magical 30 minutes that this thing's playing, for you to get that special deal where you can pay me then over time. I'm even asking for a ton of money now. You can pay me over time if you do it now for this thing.
That's the scary thing about credit. It's getting easier and easier, especially on the internet, to get into credit debt without realizing what you're doing. There's so many. I don't know if this is the same in America, but in the UK now, lots of like student focused like clothing brands have you could buy this dress for, I don't know, £80, or you could buy it for £12 installment. And that maths doesn't work, but £12 installments. And that is credit, that's debt that students getting into, even more than they already have, of course, from student loans. But and they don't necessarily realize what they're doing. They don't realize they're taking, it's not like getting a mortgage or getting a payday loan or something. It's just buying a dress over 6 months or whatever. But it is creating this normalization of like paying in installments and things like that, paying above your means. When in reality, if you can't afford that dress in that moment, you probably shouldn't be spending £80 on a dress, right? Probably is a bad idea. It's not like a house; it's not going to appreciate in value,
Right.
So yeah, it's a weird thing. I don't know why distributing the cost, even if it's going to be more money in the end, I don't know why that suddenly makes us feel better that we're purchasing something, but it does, and I'm sure you've experienced it yourself as well.
Oh yeah, I try to shy away from that, and also I think the spending or the buying of something is just simple click now. I just click it. I don't even spend money. I just click it. I click the button. That takes a the act. I think Tony Robbins talks about as activation energy, and I don't think he made that up. I think it's a psychological term, but the activation energy is the amount of energy that we have to put into something to do it, right?
Yeah.
And if the activation energy is so easy that I click a button, that's almost no activation energy. Whereas, in your house example, if the activation energy is I got to talk with this person, I got to go see this place, I got to get all these forms, I got to fill them all out, I got to send them all in, I got to get do all of this stuff over weeks. That's a lot of activation energy, and so so you wouldn't do that for a dress unless it was an amazing dress. I don't think you'd do it for dress. I wouldn't do it for dress. I don't. That's a nice sweater, but I don't think you'd wear it.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd do it for this, even this job. I guess you're right. I think that like the activation energy on a house, for example, means that the amount of it means that when you buy a house, at least in most circumstances, I mean, for most people, you have to put in so much effort to even reach the point where you can pay a deposit, right? That you're sure by that point you want the house. I mean, maybe people sign slightly dodgy deals, they understand, but they still desperately want the house enough. Whereas, having credit on this smaller stuff and just being a click, that's the activation energy is nothing, right? It's so easy. And that's like Amazon brought in a few years ago the buy it now feature for purchases under, I think, £100 or something. And instead of having to put your card details in or click through to shipping and do 2 or 3 clicks, you can just do 2 clicks. But like one on should I buy this, and then buy it now immediately, and it's ordered to your house. And it's so easy to do that. I'm sure drunkenly you might have done that a few times late at night. I have done it many times with unnecessary purchases. Just like, oh yeah, I need some socks with a nice pattern on them. Why not? Oops, I spent 30 quid on socks. It just, because it only took 2 clicks.
Yeah. So along the lines of purchases, what's the best purchase? If you think of the best purchase, I'll give you a second here to think about it. The best purchase that you've made, or one of, I'm terrible with bests. So maybe what's the top 1 to 3 best purchases? Something, what, like, when I say best purchase, what comes to your mind? What have you made?
It sounds a bit probably kind of too like I'm trying to answer cleverly, but I think I purchased a book actually 2 weeks ago on how to improve handwriting, right? And that's probably the best purchase I think I've made. At least it's fresh in my mind. A simple book, because my handwriting's really bad, right? It's been bad since I was younger. And it's been a barrier in a way to some things. I make notes all day about various meetings I have, and then I read them back and I don't understand them. I can't even read my own notes. So I think that something as simple as a book, right? I know this seems big for being like the best purchase you ever made, but that's not just a book, right? It's improving you. And the best investment, someone told me years ago, the best investment you can make is improving yourself, learning more or gaining a new skill or anything else. And so a book like that is directly doing that. I bought it for one purpose, and that was to improve myself, right? And as much as I could have bought countless other things, I'm sure buying a house may have been up there, but that's great. That's a vehicle for me to improve myself. It's not something that's going to directly improve myself. I don't know if that logic makes sense.
That's great. I think that makes a complete. It makes a lot of sense to me, and I empathize with that because my handwriting is terrible as well. I end up I'll like chicken scratch something out, and then I'll be like, I can't quite read that, and then like I'll like go over it again to try and make it better, which makes it worse, and then eventually I scratch it out, and then I'll write something different. And it's frustrating to other people too because they're like, I don't know what like, I don't know what you just said, and I'm looking at you like, I don't know either. I'm not sure. Could be bird.
What's your best purchase? I'm interested now.
Oh man, it's not going to be as epic as yours. But the thing that came to my mind as I was thinking about it was I've got a pour over coffee maker. So I was in Seattle, I think. Yeah, I was in Seattle several years ago, and great coffee shop called La Marzocca. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right or not, but I think that's what it's called. Industrial atmosphere, wooden floors, open ceiling, and then these cool coffee makers, a barista over there, and they had this little glass carafe. I don't have it in front of me. They had this glass carafe and a little pour over little gizmo on top of there, and then they put it underneath this little water nozzle and dialed it down so it was just pouring the right amount of water onto that. And I was like, I love the experience of that. I love the kind of the technical detail they're putting into this coffee, and then they served it to me on this like wooden plate or wooden I don't know, wooden serving thing, right? It's early, man. My words aren't in yet. They're coming. So this wooden thing and the glass carafe on there and a mug. And I was like, this is an awesome experience. And then I like wandered through this little warehouse thing and sat down in this cool chair. I loved it so much. Sitting in that coffee thing, in La Marzocca, I believe that's when I went online to Amazon. I was like, I can find one of these. And I bought myself a wooden tray and a glass carafe and a cheapo pour over thing, and it has become part of my routine to slow me down and kind of ease into this enjoyment of this cup of coffee. Like I get to make this cup of coffee for me and just kind of relax into it, and that's, for me, it's been a great purchase because it did allow me to slow down. Almost forced me to slow down a little bit in something that I really enjoy, instead of just like skating through this, like press the button, get the coffee. And I have more control over it. And I happen to like having control over my coffee.
Yeah. I mean, also pour over is a really nice way of enjoying coffee. If you're going to have good quality coffee, you might as well have pour over, right? It's a really nice way. And without buying a full espresso machine at home, you've got this really nice experience. It's slow. You take the time to appreciate it. Probably I quite respect that choice as the best purchase.
Janie Meek says hi. Janie, if you're still listening, or if anybody else is listening out there, if you've got a cool purchase that you've made that you think is your best purchase, you're welcome to drop it into the chat. We'll get you up on the screen here, and Sam can mock you for the thing that you bought.
I'm sure they'll be better than ours.
Exactly. Somebody's be like, I don't even know. Somebody will be like, I adopted a puppy that was lame, and we'll be like, of course you did.
All right. Yeah. That actually, your coffee story reminded me. I was in Vietnam just before the COVID pandemic became a thing, and I don't know why I didn't realize this, because obviously Vietnam has a huge amount of coffee produced. It's a really famous for its coffee, but I didn't know when I was there for some reason. And I went to this coffee shop, and we went in, and they were really, really proud of their beans, really proud of their process. And part of that process was you ordered a coffee, and instead of bringing it to the table, they told you to come up and watch them make it. And they made it with a pour over, sort of a bit similar to how you described. I think it was slightly different. And they said, the reason we do this is because you know when you're having coffee, you should stop and even if you're using it to power your day, you should stop and appreciate that moment, and then enjoy the coffee because someone's put a lot of effort into producing this coffee for you. You know, it's been grown, it's been roasted, it's been ground, it's been made by a barista. So you should have that process as part of it. And then, funny enough, they brought it over on a wooden plate, exactly like you described. But yeah, it's a good way to slow down and actually appreciate the product. You know,
it is. It turns it into a ceremony, I think. And I don't know that we take enough time. I know for me, I have tendency to get into my mode and just boom, 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 and there's I think this opportunity to just sit for a ceremony for just a little bit, to create the atmosphere that we want to have around whatever that thing is that we care about. Janie says she's from Western Australia. She also has a confession to make that she does not drink coffee.
Well, that's fair enough.
This is the wrong show for you, Janie. You have to stop listening now. No, I'm kidding. So the 50% of people in the U.S. don't drink coffee.
Really?
Nope. 50%. 50%. Yeah. There's only 50% of people drink coffee in the U.S. Plus or minus, and the rest drink tea or Coca-Cola. I don't know.
I think that tea I can understand, but you need a hot drink. So if you haven't got coffee or tea, what the hell? What else are you going to drink?
That's true. Well, and Coca-Cola doesn't work so well hot.
No, yeah, I can't imagine it does.
It sounds disgusting. I've never had it, but it sounds terrible.
I think the other thing about the turning coffee into a ceremony is kind of could be extrapolated to a lot of products we have. Coffee's one of them, but like we kind of just take advantage of this idea that we get these products brought to us, and that's how we just enjoy them quickly. But if you think about coffee, most of it has been grown on the other side of the world, like roasted by someone, and then driven or flown to you, and then on the supermarket, then you've bought it, and then you've grabbed. It's a ridiculously long process, and you know we're really lucky to be able to have that so accessible to us, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the same with most of our products. Like this mug, right? I'm sure that most of the stuff that went into that mug was, you know, a long design process, a long making process, and yeah, I take it, you know, to my advantage. I just drink from it every day and don't think about it. And that's probably, we can't go around thinking about every product, because otherwise our lives would be surrounded by us always like praising every product we have. But it's good to sometimes take a moment, you know.
Oh, absolutely. I bought a handful of years ago. I do business consulting work, and I made these. I was like, what do I give? Like, what do I give out to people? And because I didn't want to give pens, because I don't have any crappy pens here by design, but I have a specific pen that I use, and it's I've got two different kinds here. This happens to be a Jetstream, but it's just normally a pen that's just kind of like you pick it up in in an office store. It's not a super fancy pen. It's not like weighted and with inserts and stuff, but it's a solid writing pen. I've tested it out. I love it. And so I thought, well, I don't want to give out pens like banks give out pens or something like that, where it's just like the worst pen. It's done in 15 minutes, and it makes you think like, what? Nobody cares about this pen. So I bought notepads with an extra thick back.
I see.
And so you can write on it. Exactly. You use it. It sits on your desk. It doesn't go away, and it's a yellow, and it's specifically yellow because I read something at one point in time that yellow makes you 30% more creative than white.
I think that's a really good idea, because so many businesses give out products that just people throw away. And also you've thought about giving your whoever you give it to, you're thinking about giving them like some more creativity maybe, and encourage them to actually do like share their ideas. And yet also it's something that's in front of them every day, reminding them of who you are.
Yeah, so that would be the experience, right? So it's like back to that idea of ceremony. It's like I'm going to write down my best ideas on this thing, or I'm going to commemorate whatever it is I'm thinking about. Right? I'm taking that moment of time, and the thing that our brains, and I get to put it down into something that matters, right? Something that I've thought into. I feel like it has a cyclical I don't know, kind of like an increase in care. I don't know if that's the right word. It sounds a little soft, and gooey, but
Yeah.
I
think that makes sense.
Casey said she gave up caffeine, but decaf is surprisingly better than she expected. I agree. That makes sense. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, caffeine is a good thing to get off of if you can. I haven't had enough decaf coffee to judge whether or not I could do that, to be honest. But yeah, you realize if you've been having quite a lot of coffee, even just for a week, like maybe a cup extra than you normally have, you stop doing that, and suddenly you actually do things like get the shakes. It's really actually kind of dreadful. But the taste of coffee is so good, you always go back to it.
It is. I agree. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, so besides coffee, you seem like a guy who thinks about things deeply. What's been on your mind recently? What's been circling in the space?
I think that something I'm working on at the moment with my company, and I'm going to try and do this in a way that's not sales.
You can say your company, it's fine.
is basically we're trying to combat greenwashing in the food industry, right? And
I don't know what that is.
So greenwashing is basically the idea that any food business, not just food business, any business, right, does all the right things to look like they're being green, look like they're being eco, being sustainable, doing good things for the environment. And in reality, they're not doing anything. So an example might be there's a local cafe, there's about millions of these kind of cafes nowadays. All of its branding's like nice, looking recyclable wood, and they've got, they say everything's fair trade, but then in reality, they don't even recycle their waste. They have huge amount of food waste. They don't pay their staff a proper wage. They're not being sustainable at all. But people go to those venues thinking that they're really eco and sustainable and good for the world, right? And that's greenwashing. And that's a really simple. You don't think that really matters that much if one or two cafes is doing that. But the problem with the whole of business and the whole of any kind of industry, really, but especially the food industry, is this is happening en masse, right? With so many businesses and so many industries. It's the same with even charitable giving. They say they're doing some charitable giving, but actually they give such a tiny proportion, it doesn't really make a difference. And that's problematic for two reasons, right? Firstly, customers can't trust what they're doing, what they're going to anymore. They can't trust what they're buying. And secondly, words like sustainable, which should really matter, right? If you're being sustainable, that should be really important because you're doing something good for the planet, right? That is degraded because now if I say to someone, I'm working towards a more sustainable world, people are like, sure you are, or what does that actually mean? Whereas it should mean something really strong. It should be an empowering thing to say, right? So that's been on my mind a lot because we're working towards it, but also it's actually almost annoying when you see companies do that, but it's everywhere. I'm sure you know what I'm talking. You've probably experienced something similar with any business you kind of dealt with.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's the facade of, and again, it gets back to what we were talking about earlier. How do you market to people? What do you make it look like? What do you make it sound like so that people will buy it? And so, yeah, hey, we're going to take care of the planet. We're going to take care of the world in some nebulous way. It goes just so deep or just so deeply, and then it stops. I think ways around that for charities, and at least in the U.S., maybe it's globally, are I don't know, can't remember the website, but it's like Charity Watch or something like that, where that organization has done the research on the finances for that charity, so that how much money goes to administrative expenses and how much money goes to this and how much money goes to that and how much money goes to marketing. And what you find a lot in some of these cases, like, hey, we're in it for all these people, but you find out like 70% of the costs went to marketing. It's like, yeah. So what you did is you took a lot of your money to just go get more money. Which it's like, okay, well, maybe not. Whereas if you took that same amount of cash and put it down to your local soup kitchen, maybe that would, maybe those dollars are spent 100% go to food because the rest of the expenses are covered by some corporate entity or something like that. So I think it's kind of the same thing where you can whitewash this thing, or or you say green, you call it greenwashing, right?
Yeah.
So you're greenwashing.
Greenwashing is the same concept, just specifically for the environment. But yeah. And I think that you're right. I think it's quite good that there's places you can see. I mean, charities should be publishing what they spend their money on. I think they might have to legally, but the problem is most people don't actually can't be bothered to look through every balance sheet of every charity they're ever going to donate to, because that's an insane job, right? So yeah, I mean, I'm not going to like stop say big corporate charities are a bad thing. I'm sure many of them do amazing work, but it is something that happens generally. Like, I'd be surprised how many charitable agencies, like CEOs or whatever, end up traveling first class.
Well, that's Casey's point here. You find out the CEO of the charity makes $500,000 a year, which, you know, maybe there's reasons for that. I don't know, but it does call it when you look deeper, or should we be looking deeper into some of these things, and how can we expose that? So you're doing it in terms of, are people really taking care of our organizations really taking care of the environment, and not just giving lip service to it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the concept. And I think, like I said, it's really a big deal in the food industry, because so it's not just cafes and restaurants, it's all up the food supply chain in every nation. There are people who say that they're doing X and are actually doing Y, and it's because there's no legal regulation to say that you can't. I mean, there's stuff that says you can't false advertise, but you can, you know, something as simple as changing your logo to green, right? Suddenly makes people think subconsciously, oh, this company might be good for the environment, right? And they could be burning fossil fuels every day. I don't know, you know, and that's insane, right? So yeah, we're trying our best. Hopefully, we'll change something in the end, but you know, it's a slow process.
Interesting. Well, I know you're coming up on the end of your time here. How do people get in contact with this? I want to put this up on the screen if you want to go research this concept further.
So if you want to contact us, we have a website which is EATE Collective. So it's Eat Collective, but it's Eat with an E on the end. There's contact forms there. We can send you information over about greenwashing and about any of these problems in the food industry.
Is that generally collective.com.eu or whatever?
.com. And we can. I mean, Eat with an E on the end. There's just an extra E there before the T. But yeah. We're, you know, I think that if you just search it up yourself, you'll find some amazing companies. B Corporation is a company. Yeah, that's perfect. That you should take a look at. They help big corporates become more sustainable. And you know, there's people out there trying to do good things. I think it's just we're in a kind of in between stage in the world now. Where it's people make choices.
I think you're onto something. I love what stands out to me. You said, you know, there are people out there trying to do great things, and I think that's very, very true. And like the lesson of marketing, like the lesson of infomercials, if you want to raise awareness for the great thing that you're doing, you have to learn solutions or ways to work with the system to raise that awareness.
Yeah.
You know, we've discussed how to take you know, the Coffee with Humans thing and put that up on YouTube. You've got your thing that you want to raise awareness for organizations that are doing a great job, and then also raise awareness for organizations that really aren't truthfully doing a good job in you know, however it is they're choosing to communicate. But seems like I don't know, it's a very interesting thing that you're working on. It's resonated with our users too. Great info, both of you, and Casey's got some comments here. You know, the population, the CEOs. She's a thinker, and she's trying to dig deep. And sounds like that's something that you're looking to help people do. Is how do they dig deep and do their research?
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully. Anyway, we'll see what happens. Well, thanks very much. Anyway, for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled that you came on. Thanks so much for having coffee with me. I know that our listeners take all sorts of bits and pieces from these things, and we get great feedback. So you're definitely part of that. We're going to be on. I'll be back with you in just a little bit, but first I'm going to play a little outro video.
One of the things I love about Coffee with Humans are the raw conversations I get to have, meeting new people just like you. If you or someone you know should be on Coffee with Humans, go to coffeewithhumans.com. Remember, the only rule is no sales calls.
This has been Coffee with Humans. Subscribe to get updates or click to have coffee with me. coffeewithhumans.com.